we need to talk about Kizaru and to a lesser extent the other admirals, because for the past few months I've been saying throughout this arc, as well as other people have been picking up, that Kizaru isn't exactly the person we all thought he was, and there's actually a lot more layers to his character. For the first time in the series, Kizaru is conflicted. Kizaru has always been portrayed as a troll, but also someone who puts business before everything. Business, business, business is everything Kizaru stands for. And he will do anything to get the job done, even putting his emotions to the side, as well as the well-being of the civilians in the area. But something we've seen throughout Egghead as well as Kuma's flashback is he's morally conflicted and uncomfortable. He clearly doesn't want to do these things, but because he puts business first, he has to do these things and understands that the current situation isn't justified and obviously thinks these aren't the right things to do. As you can see with Saturn discussing the deal for Kuma to become a warlord and to save Bonnie, it appears as if Kizaru doesn't agree with the stipulations or the current situation at hand, but because he's just a soldier, a cog in the machine, he will always follow orders. This is why Egghead is going to be a very pivotal arc for Kizaru's character going forward. Will he betray the Marines and gain a will and mind of his own for the very first time, or will he double down and stand on business? Kizaru is in the exact same position as Kuzan was during the Ohara incident, someone who was forced to kill a close friend in order to maintain the balance of the world. But we all know how that incident ended, with Aokiji's personality and character changing forever. Could the same apply here with Kizaru? You can tell from the very beginning of this arc that Kizaru has been very morally conflicted. He has to kill some of his closest friends, but Kizaru clearly doesn't want to do this, even questioning Saturn about the methods on how to finish this mission, as he doesn't want to really hurt any of his friends. Even when he's fighting Luffy on Egghead, you can tell that he's not necessarily taking this fight seriously. Compare him to his other altercations, even in Film Red and Marineford, where this guy was an absolute Terminator, willing to sacrifice the well-beings of civilians in order to achieve the greater good. Even sniping a key out of Luffy's hand with pinpoint accuracy. This guy was an absolute menace and was always on point, but the Kizaru we're getting now is completely different. But as this incident continues to progress, the layers of Kizaru are starting to peel off. We're learning more about his character, his personality, his morality, his emotions. This is very rare of Kizaru, someone who tends to hide his emotions and personality using troll tactics and doing anything he can to achieve his mission, even sacrificing civilians or hurting those close to him. And this goes back to Kizaru's philosophy: unclear justice, as we do not know the true emotions of Kizaru or what he's truly thinking in the heat of battle, because he's just, as he calls it, a cog in the machine. Oda even answered why Kizaru didn't attempt to become Fleet Admiral, and it's because he doesn't like to be a leader. He actually enjoys being a follower, taking orders, and thus he doesn't have to take responsibility or accountability. He always uses this as an excuse to justify his actions. I'm just a soldier, I'm just a cog in the machine. When you think unclear justice, you think of uncertainty. I don't know. Which is why Kizaru has always been in the gray area of moral and absolute justice. He's not as demonic as Akainu and Green Bull, but he's not morally bound like Aokiji or Fujitora. But that's what makes Kizaru the perfect soldier. He doesn't really question things for the most part. Even if he shows discomfort, he'll always follow orders and does what he has to do. Which is why Kizaru is very interesting with his unclear justice, because he uses that as a way to just follow orders, nothing else, nothing more. But we know that's not how things work. That's bullshit. The entire series is about free will, freedom, and doing what you want and desire, and honestly, Kizaru lacks all of that. We never knew or know what exactly he wants or what he truly desires, and that is why he could potentially betray the Marines and say enough is enough, and finally help out his friends and save them, as he's finally doing what he actually wants to do rather than take orders like he always does his entirety of his life. And he can learn that through his fight against Luffy and Nika, aka the Sun God, the God of Freedom. Kuzan already learned this lesson years ago, as he always said that the world government wasn't the end-all be-all. In fact, he has a lot more freedom now that he's left, but he's still the same guy that we all know and love. And maybe similar to Aokiji after the incident, Kizaru as well could change his philosophy from unclear to clear justice, but his emotional turmoil isn't the only reason why he could potentially betray the Marines. We also have to look at his powers and what he's based off of. But what really tipped the cup over and made a lot of people believe Kizaru will betray Saturn was chapter 1100. Not only did he look discontent with the stipulations being placed on Kuma, but also he was seen doing the Nika dance alongside Kuma, Vegapunk, Sentomaru, and Bonnie, 4 of which are now allies to the Straw Hat Pirates. And now it makes you wonder, does Kizaru know about Sun God Nika? We know that even knowing his name is taboo, and Kuma might have possibly told Kizaru and the gang about the story of him, and it actually kind of makes sense because if you go back to chapter 1092, when he first fights Luffy in Gear 5, he looks at it as if he kind of recognizes it or at least heard about it, and I highly doubt Saturn told him about Sun God Nika. At best, he probably told him Luffy's fruit power could do some weird shit, and Kizaru's like, okay, say less. So because of the true nature of Luffy and his fruit, Kizaru might end up switching sides and joining Sun God Nika in getting rid of the world government. Maybe not now, maybe even by the end of this series. And even when you look at his powers, light is usually depicted as good, something that the good guys are a part of, light versus darkness. And we know Blackbeard is holding the dark fruit, and I think a lot of us would love to see Kizaru versus Blackbeard just because we want to see how their powers would match up. And if you remember, Enies Lobby is located on the Never Night Island because there is never nighttime on there. People even theorize that a previous user of Kizaru's fruit used his awakening, and that's why it's like that. And the hole in Enies Lobby is eerily similar to that of Lelucia Kingdom, or well, formerly known as Lelucia Kingdom until it was destroyed. So it's possible that this place could be connected to the Void Century and the Great Kingdom, and thus giving more emphasis on Kizaru and his powers and why he might end up joining the Sun God Nika. And you know how light is usually depicted in media, it's usually on the side of good, it's an enemy of darkness, as well as dispelling the evil of the world. And even when you look at what Kizaru represents, the monkey, which is based off of the story of Momotaro, which One Piece as well as Luffy is also based off of loosely. And in that story, the monkey helps Momotaro in defeating the ogres and saving the world. It's a famous story in Japan, but now that we're in a situation where 2 monkeys are now fighting Luffy and Kizaru, who also represents Sun Wukong. And if you look at the Monkey D family, these guys are all rebels. Even Garp, who's a part of the Marines, doesn't necessarily take orders and does what he wants, as they all represent freedom. And because Kizaru also represents a monkey, it's interesting to see if Oda's gonna play off what he's based off of, and he might end up betraying the Marines. And for the first time in modern day, we might see a change in the Marine structure, where we've never actually seen an admiral in modern time get changed. We've seen with the Yonko, the Shichibukai, whenever a member is defeated, they're then replaced. And Saturn doesn't seem to be very merciful or give excuses, and I wouldn't be surprised even if Kizaru didn't betray the Marines. If he were to lose and fail his mission, I can see them replacing him with someone new, which would be very exciting, as we can see the structure of the 3 balances finally take a major shift on the side of the Marines, because again, they haven't really changed much since the 2-year time skip. As the series progresses and the more we learn about the admirals, they're not necessarily the evil forces that stand in the way of the Straw Hats as we all thought. They're actually all pretty morally ambiguous, and as hinted by Oda, even Green Bull, who's a racist, seems to have a sad story based off the tattoo on his chest. So it's interesting that Kizaru, who's usually depicted in the gray area of moral justice, is now getting his philosophies challenged in this current situation. So will Kizaru follow his justice and orders to the bitter end, or will he have a change of heart and gain free will, finally doing what he always wanted to do, following his dreams and doing what he desires? I guess only time will tell.